Today on What Went Wrong, how to keep your film from turning into a piece of Hi, I'm Brett Mauser, and I've made over 40 feature films. And normally, they're very character driven. I love my characters. I think they're fascinating, very well rounded. I love the hero's journey. I like to see them go on their arcs. But I made a mistake on a film called The Benders, and this was my first feature back after my little I'm giving up hiatus.
Your sabbatical.
My sabbatical. It was a science fiction film, and I had just basically recently left Final Cut Pro, the editing software, because they went from Final Cut HD, Final Cut 7 over to Final Cut X, and a lot of people hate what they did with that software. So I jumped over to Premiere, okay. And Adobe it still does their subscription base. Back in the day, when you had a couple choices of different types of editing software, Final Cut, Premiere, or Avid, certain things, and they were all pretty expensive.
Right.
And then you had After Effects, which was for basically like Photoshop for moving video.
Okay.
Photoshop itself, and then Illustrator, and all these pieces of software from Adobe, and they were $1,500 a pop.
Good God!
And that was no upgrades. That was, if you wanted to upgrade later, then you had to pay another $600 or anything like that. Well, the subscription.
Who are these being made for?
Not us.
Do they sell this stuff?
So Adobe came up with the Creative Cloud, the subscription base, where you pay, if you're a student, $20 a month, or me, I pay $50 a month for it. And you get all the software.
Oh.
All the software and all the upgrades, and I love it to death.
Cool.
And I was able to finally explore After Effects. Now, I did have a copy of After Effects that I got off of eBay many years ago, and I tried it. Didn't have a clue what to do. I was like, I looked at it first. I was like, oh, this is gonna be like Premiere. I can get this. No,
not even close.
Not. And they don't come with manuals.
God.
So you just have to kind of figure it out. So
just throwing darts and hoping something sticks.
Yeah.
Right?
So I gave up on After Effects.
Yeah.
And then with the Creative Cloud, I had After Effects, and now and by that point, YouTube and a lot of the tutorials were out. So I discovered this site called VideoCopilot.net, and they have and still do terrific After Effects tutorials.
Okay.
I learned backwards and forwards everything I needed to know about After Effects through this website, and a couple little YouTube videos here and there. So they have, how to do this, how to do this effect, how to do that effect. And they were all these Hollywood visual effects.
That's awesome.
Like from Iron Man 3, how they had like the plasma underneath their skin, things like that. And they show you how to do that and all these great effects. So I just had this laundry list of effects that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And this was one of my first, I can't remember if I'd gone 4K yet or not. I don't think so, but it was HD. I was working on my DSLR. It might have been 4K at that point. I just can't remember.
Yeah.
So it looked really good. I was learning color balancing and color grading, and these visual effects. I wish I'd had them on the Innocent Saga, which I do now since I'm re-editing and able to go back and do a lot of stuff. But I had this, I want to do this, I want to do this effect. And I wrote my script based around the effects that I could do. And I forgot character. Now I followed the hero's journey. So, and people, some complaint that people have talked to me about are some of my plots. Well, this was fully plot driven, had great visual effects, looked really good, but I neglected character. And there was no real charm or real humor. You couldn't attach to these actors or these characters.
Cool stuff's happening, but who cares?
Yeah. So I can't, and this isn't a fault on the actors.
No.
The actors that were in this film were great.
I think I'm gonna be sick.
On my shoes, really?
From Sergio to Eileen to Durat, great actors.
I do love Eileen.
You know, yeah, you see the other, you see them in other films.
Yeah.
They're spectacular. I didn't give them what they needed to work with,
Yeah.
and I let the special effects be the driving force of that film.
You and Star Wars.
Yeah. So when you're making your film, it's got to be all of it combined. It's got to be everything.
Well, more Transformers than Star Wars.
And I've learned, especially because it started off with me looking back at, especially like James Bond films from the 60s and 70s, even the 80s. And some of the really bad green screen work, some of the really bad special
One
effects.
of my favorite movies is Goldfinger, and the driving is just...
Yeah. The rear projection
It's
stuff.
like, really, guys? Yeah.
But those are still great films. Because the characters are so cool. And when I get, and it kind of sucks when I get slammed for some of my special effects. Because it's like,
Really, guys?
now you're nitpicking. Now you're just trying to pick out because the performances are great. Some of the films are really good.
Yeah.
But the effects aren't there because we didn't have the budget. We didn't have the money. But the visual effects that I'm doing today are thousands of times better than the stuff you're getting, decades ago.
Yeah.
That are still considered classics and people watch and still enjoy. So to me, I've got to look back and say, okay, well, what is it? It's the characters.
Yeah.
It's the characters that you can watch in a Bond film or Willow, and these primitive special effects, but you're still enjoyable and you still watch them and you still get it and it's still a good film.
Yeah. There's a lot of good films to where the special effects are a little dodgy. One of my favorite movies, and I've talked about it a lot, is The Black Hole. Love The Black Hole. And if you understand the special effects and what they were doing, they were ahead of their time in certain cases. I mean, the camera that they used for Star Wars, Disney tried to get it and they didn't, so they invented their own, which was better than the one that Lucas had, and now it became the standard. But then as you look up with HD and all this other stuff that's coming up, now you can see wires, because at the beginning of the movie everyone's weightless, and so you're seeing the wires now, because before you couldn't,
Right.
But now they are. So it's like, oh.
I remember in the original Star Wars, you could see the VHS copy.
Yeah.
I remember
See
you
the-
could see the little box
see the
around
boxes.
around the TIE fighters
Yeah.
and the star and everything. You could see the little boxes how they
How they put 'em
matted
in.
it in.
Right. Certain things to where if you now that you can look at it with these HD, you could see at one point that they're in this little tower area, and there's no actually way to get to the tower, and it's being filmed backwards. It's like, you can see it now, but back then you couldn't.
Well, it's a prime example of the TV shows, the detective shows of the 60s and 70s, where you would have, you watch them now on your big screen TV and you see the fight with Mannix or, Barnaby Jones or whatever, and, they cut to the wide shot and it's obviously a dude in a wig,
Yeah.
the stunt man.
Yeah.
But when you were watching it on TV at home on a screen this big, you couldn't tell that was a stunt man.
Yeah.
So, the technology
Technology
changed.
changes, yeah. And so, but I'll still watch The Black Hole, even with its flaws, even though I can see the wires now, because for me, I love the dark, foreboding. It's a haunted mansion in space. Haunted mansion and space, two things I love. It's a science fiction tower of terror that I can't help but love. And the characters are Maximilian Schell as Dr. Reinhardt. he's fabulous. Vincent, the robot who's...
Those are my favorite characters.
Oh my God, Vincent and Bob.
Bob, from Houston.
Yeah, from Houston, and Vincent, who was, I can't remember his name now, who played him. He wasn't even credited. But listening to the rapport that Bob had with Dan and the captain and the first officer of the Palomino, just the stuff they say, the great lines that you hear. Vincent, will you sit here to irritate me? No, sir, to educate you. Boom! And the lines that they had between them and the characters. Some of the characterizations a little bit weak at times, but it was 1979. They wanted no name actors because they didn't want to be. But it's still the story drives and that music. Talk about how that 7-note motif in the black hole. I've got it on my iPad right now. I mean, right now, because even though it is 41 years old, it is still one of the most iconic and known and foreboding and scary. I love that. I love to see that in the Innocent Saga. More of that scary kind of dark whatever. That's what I like. That's me. But the characters drove the story. The music drove the story. The scenes drove the story. The special effects. Now back then it was like, holy crap, the black hole spinning. Because now it looks kind of like a Drano circle. But I mean, back then it was amazing. The floating effects.
Well, I mean,
the story is what drove that book and what I fell in love with as a kid.
Yeah. Well, one of our previous episodes we were talking about Star Trek, and I've gone back and but when we had our last conversation,
been a while.
We talked about DS9 and
right.
Voyager.
DS9 and Voyager.
And I do want to take this moment to interject. Since then, I have gone back and I've watched the entire DS9 series. And you and I kind of Voyager versus. Well, I want to say this though, but I will stand by, because I mentioned that I enjoyed Voyager more than I enjoyed DS9. I will say this: I still enjoyed Voyager more than I did DS9, but DS9, now that I've watched the whole series from beginning to end, was a much better story. It was better told. It was more dramatic. It was an incredible series. So I will backtrack on that a little bit to say that I've watched that. It was a much more superior series than Voyager. I just enjoyed Voyager from my perspective, from what I want out of a Star Trek thing. But I love
right. And talking about characters, the thing I did love about DS9 was there were two characters that really, really enthralled me: Ben Sisko, Captain Sisko, and Garak.
Yeah.
Okay, because Garak reminds me of people I used to work with, and Ben Sisko kind of reminds me of my father. Because in watching Ben Sisko, you see him going from a Starfleet captain, and you get him as his wife has died and he's kind of disillusioned with things, and then you see him still trying to be the I'm Starfleet, I'm the good guy, and you start seeing how the sausage is made. Yeah, Starfleet's awesome, and we try to keep the peace, but you have to understand what goes on behind the scenes.
Like what is it, Section 30 or whatever? 30
well, there's Section 31 or whatever where they were, but there was also the scene, the best...
In the Pale Moonlight.
The Pale Moonlight is the absolute best episode. I've seen how that kind of stuff can happen. How do I say this without saying this? I understand how that happens. Mm-hmm. I've watched it happen, how we're doing something that maybe we shouldn't be doing, but this is how you keep the peace. Or this is how you don't die. This is how you win the war. This is how you do this other stuff. And sometimes you do things that would get you thrown in the Hague, in certain situations. But this is how diplomacy really works. This is something, and it's never anywhere else. Sci-fi being what it was, the special effects being what they were, those characters and watching that character fall off of that precipice, realizing what he has to do and understand, that was the single best. It was one of those things where you're watching it happen, and I know what's going to happen. Because I've seen it really happen. Yeah. But I've watched it happen, where you get the nice young kid, you're like, come here, let me show you how this really works, kids. You're not going to like it.
Yeah.
But this is what you're being paid to do.
I delve a little bit into that. In the Innocent Saga, there was a conversation between DeMarcus's character Ruby and his father, played by James House.
Right.
And he's like,
I mean, I understand the way the world is. Love, peace, goodwill towards men. That's not reality, son. See, reality is that in order for people like your mother, your brother, and that little girl in there, in order for them to have love, peace, and all that, it takes men like me and you to give it to them.
People will they go to the store, they take their kids to class. That's how the world works. But what they don't understand is there are, in this case, characters in that world who are having to do things that would give you nightmares for the rest of your existence. But that's what has to be done. I love that is the characters. The sci-fi is good. The effects are awesome. Love the soundtrack, but it was watching Garak and Cisco interact, two creatures, individuals from two separate worlds, but yet having to come together to make the world work. That character stuff is why I watch your shows. It's not about the special. I mean, I like the special effects. Don't get me wrong, and I love watching watching what's going on. I like the storylines and stuff, but I love watching the characters change and mutate and become something that they weren't before. That is the most enthralling part of any show, of any movie, of any TV series, is watching a character go from one thing and transfer to another, maybe to a character that is not the nice character that I knew before. Maybe who becomes totally different. Maybe who becomes totally something wonderful and something to be looked up to. And maybe becomes, the absolute monster that he didn't want to be. But that's what he has to do. I love that.
Yeah. And that's something that I didn't do in the Benders. Is they follow the path, but nobody really changed very much. The character that Eileen played, Simone, which was Simone, Sim 1.
Oh, gotcha. I'm with you now.
She followed this path and she learned something, but she herself as a character didn't evolve, didn't really change. Yeah. She had these characters that grabbed her by the hand and took her on this journey, and that was it.
Yeah.
I think the movie said it was a very philosophical movie. And had some very great points and some very good ideas and thoughts and imagination behind it.
What about free will, emotions, the ability to make our own decisions?
Why is free will so important to you? I mean, why is it any better or worse than, say, fate or predetermined outcomes?
But the characters just didn't lend themselves to grow, to really go on that epic journey. Yeah, she's a different point. She's kind of different from where she ended up, but at the same time,
not that different.
Gotcha. It was like she learned something, she knew something, but she herself that knowledge didn't change her as to who she was. She didn't have any of those real in the pale moonlight moments where she had to accept and decide, this is who I was. Now I understand that this is what needs to be done.
She didn't do the Sarah Connor journey.
Right. What needed to be done fell within the way she believed at the beginning of the movie. Right. So she didn't have to grow to make that ultimate change or make that decision. She kept her morals about her, or the way she saw the world. She kept that.
Yeah.
And that's something that you have to do as a filmmaker is have them go through a journey.
Yeah.
And I didn't with her enough. One of the things I say in the book is about with your character.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be a sadistic son of a bitch to be a screenplayer.
Yeah.
Screenplay writer, because in every scene you have to go, how can I with my character? And if I with them enough, let's a little bit more. And because that's what's going to make the audience fall in love with that character. In the Innocent Saga, Mike losing Diane,
right off the bat,
you sympathize with him, and you're on his quest right along with him. In the Benders, I kind of did that. I had moments where I'd with the character. She comes home, she finds her husband in bed with another woman, and right then and there, I gave her this speech that put her on top.
And in a few years, when your little 8-year-old son or daughter runs up to you and climbs up into your lap and looks up at you and asks, Daddy, where'd you and Mommy meet? You'll have to look into your loving and trusting child's eyes and lie.
I can see you're not going to be civilized.
I'm still holding the knife.
At that point, okay, her arc's done. That's done. She, that affair no longer influenced her in any way later down the movie.
Right.
Whereas it should have. She
should have rattled her trust, rattled her confidence.
That speech should have been given at the end of the movie. She needed to grow and understand that was what she needed to do and she needed to say to him.
Right.
But instead, she did that right off the bat.
Now what?
So yeah, so now
Now what?
now where do we go? Now where do we go with the character? So Benders is really a bunch of series of different scenes, but we didn't get to see Simone grow and become somebody new and somebody different. Same person as when she started off.
Are you going to kill me now?
Now, why would I do that?
And that's what you have to do. That's what will make a great story and make a great film. And character arc is first thing you decide is where does your character end up.
Yeah.
Tag is a good example. When I had that flash of two guys back to back spinning around, aiming the guns at each other, gunshot, cut to black, I knew that was the end. That's all I had to start with Tag.
Yeah.
That's where I wanted them to end up. So now I had to say, okay, how do I get them there?
Right.
And that became the story, is getting there. You need to do that as a writer, and do find your character. Where do you want that character to end up?
Yeah.
And that's where they're going to end up. Now, when you come all the way back to the beginning of the story, you need to put them as far away from this person as possible. If this person is confident, understands the way the world works, and won't take from anybody, then this person has to be what? The exact
innocent,
opposite.
Yeah, the innocent, happy, the Sarah Connor
Naive.
journey.
Yeah.
I'm
Exactly.
just a waitress in a bar. I'm just a waitress of the thing. It's like you're the savior of the world.
Yeah.
What? And that journey has to be taken.
Yeah. And don't
Once again,
let-
Linda Hamilton, love you.
And when you're doing that, understand that the characters are key in
Yeah.
any film.
Right.
Characters are key over plot, over special effects, over audio, over video, over everything.
Because that will fade.
Characters.
That will fade.
You give me an interesting character that's growing and evolving. The lighting has become secondary. The audio becomes secondary. Everything. I need that character. So don't let the special effects become the story. Don't let the lighting become the story. The story is and always will be, from the beginning of time to the end of time, a good story is about character.
Always.